Fantastic. Welcome. My name is Jerry Czerniawski, and it is a pleasure to welcome everyone today to this British Curriculum Forum event, an event that brings together teachers, practitioners, researchers, leaders, managers and academics, indeed anyone who has a passion and desire to share their critical perspectives and assumptions about researching the curriculum. With plastic, food and water wastage on the one hand, and poverty, global warming and disease on the other, the pandemic gave all of us plenty of food for thought on how we can balance our material needs while respecting the needs of our planet. But it is a balance we must achieve, and achieve it quickly, with rises in global temperatures and the warming of our oceans, the shrinking of our ice sheets and the raising of our sea levels. And with escalating carbon emissions accompanying the acidification of our oceans, it's no surprise that we are also witnessing more regular and extreme weather events. In different ways, our guest speakers today examine what we mean by sustainability, its relationship to the curriculum, and how, through research, discussion and debate, we can better understand the ways in which the curriculum can transform the lives of not just young people, but indeed all learners everywhere. Today, we are so very lucky to have as our presenters Andrew Charlton Perez from the University of Reading, Kevin Morgan from Cardiff University, Denise McKeown from South Island School, thank you, all the way in Hong Kong, all the way over in Hong Kong, Jane Essex from Strathclyde University.
So will you come when we can?
Yeah, it's back to that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan, if
So
we
turn it
could,
on to say hello.
Dan, if we can make sure all microphones are off, please. Thank you. We've got Jane Essex from Strathclyde University, Lucy Taylor from West Lodge School in Harrow, Nazreen Majid from the Centre for Climate Change and Sustainability Education at the University College London, Maruf Chowdhury Shoel. Maruf is the Research Development Manager from the Bedford College Group, Di Swift, Advisor at Keele and North Staffordshire Teacher Education at Seabridge Primary School, and Amy Strachan, Senior Learning Producer at the National History Museum. For those expecting to see Sarah Zalesnyov today, Sarah sends her apologies. Sarah unfortunately got that dreaded Ofsted call, and so I'm sure everybody today will be wishing her and her amazing school all the best. In terms of housekeeping news, Dan will be joining us in a moment to explain how the breakout rooms will function. I would also like to thank each of our speakers today for agreeing to write up each of their contributions from today's special event for a very special edition of the BERA blog. If you are a former member of the Twitterati, we would love it if you can post your former tweet, it gets so complicated these days, at hashtag BERA_climate, and that's a climate with a capital C. I'll say that again, hashtag BERA, that's in capital letters, _ climate with a capital C. And right now, Dan, over to you.
Hello. So for the breakout rooms, I'm going to, I'll do that now. Just dropped a message into the chat. So I've assigned each of those rooms 1, 2 and 3. What I'd like you to do is if you could pop the number of the room you would like to be assigned to into the chat before the breakout rooms are due to open. I will squirrel away in the background and make sure that you are assigned to the correct room. So when they do open, you should be whisked off to the right place.
Fantastic, Dan. Many thanks. I ask all our speakers. I've got Dan. Is there anything we can do to stop the noises of everybody joining with us? It would be terrific. Right now, I'd ask all of our speakers, please, to stick religiously to their timing as we have a very jam-packed event today. But right now, I would like to introduce our very first speaker, Andrew Charlton Perez, Professor of Meteorology from the University of Reading. Andrew, straight over to you right now, please.
Thanks, Jerry. I'm just going to very quickly share my slides and just check that that is working.
Rules have kind of been.
Great. So I should get going. So thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. It looks like it's going to be a really fantastic event. So my name's Andrew Charlton Perez, and I'm the head of School of Mathematical, Physical and Computational Sciences at the University of Reading. And as Jerry says, I'm a professor of meteorology. So I come to this subject very much as a working climate scientist. And it's my real pleasure to lead one of the largest climate science institutions anywhere in the UK at the University of Reading. Our Department of Meteorology has the largest collection of IPCC lead authors of any institution in the world. And I couldn't really resist starting with a bit of climate science. And I think of all the reams and reams of climate science that you could read, I think in this context, this is the figure that really kind of summarizes the challenge for us here. So this is a figure that was produced for the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report. This is the synthesis report, which brings together science from across the climate science piece. And this is showing in a depiction that actually invented by my colleague Ed Hawkins, global mean temperature from 1900 through to 2020 when the report was produced, and then for some future possible scenarios. And obviously here, blue colours mean the global mean temperature is colder, yellow and red colours mean the global mean temperature is higher. And this is a really nice summary of why education about climate and sustainability is so important. You can see there in the bottom some depictions of people born close to 1980, like me, and their life course through this climate change, and for the people that many of you will be educating now. So people born in 2020 or will be educating very soon, and their life course, and both the challenge that those people will face, but also the choices that we face as a global society about climate. And of course, it's not just the global mean temperature that matters to us. So there's now really lots of evidence looking at how changes in global mean affect us right here and right now. And one very simple way of showing that is just to look at the number of heat waves as defined by the Met Office as a function of different levels of warming here on the bottom. So 1 degree above pre-industrial, 2, 3, 4 degrees. And you can see this kind of almost linear relationship between those levels of warmings and the heat waves that we are likely to experience. So there are some real choices here to be made about our future and the impacts that it poses on all of us. Now, thinking a bit more about education, of course, we know that there's still some way to go in terms of the education that all young people receive. And there's been some fantastic work on this over the last few years, particularly led by young people themselves, actually, through Teach the Future and other organisations. And some of you will be familiar with the surveys that Teach the Future have conducted of young people. And there are just some stats there really showing the desire of young people to learn more about the environment, more about the climate and ecological crises, but the challenge that the education system faces, the lack of confidence of teachers often in being able to teach about these issues. And this has real impacts. So there's been another really interesting piece of work led by the Royal Meteorological Society, looking to understand what the climate literacy, how much climate information young people understand when they leave education. And there are some really kind of worrying things there, right? So 4 in 10 school leavers say they don't know how much the climate has warmed, you know, when they're leaving education at 18, or some of them leaving education at 18. So there's lots of work to do. And this is something that I myself and my organisation at the University of Reading have recently had significant involvement in. So ahead of the COP26 meeting, which many of you will remember in Glasgow, we brought together a wide range of stakeholders from across the education system to talk about climate education, talk about what could be done to improve climate education right now for young people across England. And through that meeting, we came up with a series of kind of quick wins, easy things that we thought could be done, or easier things that we thought could be done very quickly to make a difference at scale. And if you want to read more about our National Climate Education Action Plan, then you can find it at the link there. Now, at the same time, of course, government was thinking about this issue, very much motivated by the work of young people. And I'm sure many of you will have seen the Sustainability and Climate Change Strategy that the DFE produced, which you can find on their website, and was produced first at COP26 and then updated through a really substantial process of consultation with people in April 2022. So I'm sure many people have read the strategy, and there's lots in there, so I'm not going to be able to go into it in huge detail today. But I think first to say what's really important about that strategy is it is very much a holistic strategy. It addresses lots of areas, both of curriculum and teaching, but also other things that we should care about for our school system. So the action areas include the education estate itself and the digital infrastructure that surrounds that. It includes operations and supply chains. It includes the role that England and the UK can play internationally in driving forward better work on climate education. And of course, in my own area, there's a really strong link there between climate education, sustainability education, and green skills and careers. There are real opportunities here for young people to think about their future career and how they can make a very strong contribution to the changes that we all think we need to see. So what I want to do now is just talk through some of the initiatives that support these action areas. And I'm kind of doing that in my context as a member of the user group of the Department for Education, Sustainability and Climate Change Strategy. I'm not speaking for the department, but I certainly know some of the work that's going on, and hopefully I can kind of guide you through some of that over the next few minutes. So the first big initiative that was funded through this strategy was the National Education Nature Park. And I know that Amy Strachan is here and she will be talking in much more detail about this. I think I just really wanted to draw your attention to this. It's a fantastic initiative, really trying to engage young people again with nature, something that I think is very clear that we've lost. And there's lots of resources, lots of quality assured teaching resources that are already available on the Education Nature Park website. You can sign up your institution to join in with that. And very soon there will be climate action awards for schools and colleges coming along to support that work. So I encourage you to get involved with that, and Amy will obviously tell us much more about that later on in the session. The other big thing that's going to come in the next year or so is the need for all educational settings, so all the way from early years right the way through to universities where I work, to think about having a climate action plan in place by 2025. And again, those climate action plans are really important because they look at the whole piece. They don't just look at the curriculum, although that's a really key and critical part of what they're doing, but they also look at things like decarbonisation. They look at biodiversity, they link to the Education Nature Park, and they look at adaptation and planning. You know, many of our schools and colleges will need to be more resilient to climate change, resilient to the greater number of heat waves that we're likely to see in the future. And there's already some guidance available on the government website about that. But I would just kind of mark your cards that there have recently been 2 tenders for climate action planning support, which were announced to the sector. And as I understand it, there will be an announcement in December about the people who've won those tenders. There will be both a digital support hub to help education settings build their climate action plans and monitor them, and also a national scheme of expert advice to help those settings to develop and deliver on those plans. So a few other things that are already available in the sector to help you think about that if it's something you're interested in. One of those things is the Climate Ambassador Scheme, which we run at the University of Reading in association with our colleagues at STEM Learning. And that's really coming back to kind of my starting point here. So it's recognising that the UK has just this incredible wealth of experience in climate science and climate mitigation and adaptation. And what we really need to do is harness that expertise, get it out into other education settings and make this big national change. So we we've started the ball rolling on that. We already have signed up 250 climate ambassadors in just over 18 months. And we have the kind of supporting network of the STEM ambassador scheme to get that expertise where it's needed, to remove all the barriers to experts going and helping out and making sure that their time is really well spent in doing the work that we know so desperately needs to be done. Please do go onto the website to find out more about climate ambassadors. And if you're on the call and you think you have some expertise to share, we'd love you to sign up. We're really grateful to all the ambassadors who've already given their time to help different education settings. There's also lots of other support and advice that's already out there in the sector. Many of you will be aware of the really fantastic work that the Let's Go Zero campaign, which is a schools campaign run by the Ashton Climate Charity, is doing. They've had an incredible sign up for schools. I used to myself be a school governor and proud to be a school governor of a Let's Go Zero school, helping schools to work together to be zero carbon. And very excitingly, Let's Go Zero themselves have recently got funding for a similar kind of national network of climate action advisors, people on the ground offering free independent advice to help schools move in their journey towards decarbonisation. So do go and check that out at Let's Go Zero. Obviously, a kind of common concern that people in the sector express is the need for real support to help decarbonise the school estate. And so, again, just to mark your card, there is a really exciting programme called the Net Zero Accelerator, which is a new programme that's going to be delivered by Located, which will look at ways to enable funding to flow to schools and college to allow them to decarbonise. And you can see how desperately that's needed. The education estate currently represents 37% of public sector building carbon dioxide emissions. Now, also just to note, this is perhaps not quite the focus of what this meeting is today, but I think it's important to note the international dimension here. And you saw that was one of the action areas of the DFE strategy. So we're coming up very shortly to the COP28 meeting in Dubai. And there's really lots of work going on coming from the Climate and Education Ministers Summit that the UK organised during COP26. There will be a high-level ministerial on climate education at COP28. And that will really lead on something called the Greening Education Partnership, which is a UN initiative led by UNESCO, thinking about how work across international work between countries and across countries can help to do all of these things. And you'll see that they very much match with the kind of things that are in the DFE strategy and in strategy for climate action plans. And you will also have seen that the Department for Education themselves ran this International Green Skills Conference, which had a really great uptake, thinking about how we can transition this education into green skills for the transition to net zero. So I'm going to wrap up there. Hopefully I've given you a sense of kind of what's going on, and many of you I'm sure will know about that already. I think it's really clear that there's lots to do, but there's lots of support coming and a very clear national and international agenda. This is something which has got further and further up the climate agenda, and I'm really pleased to say that it's kind of featuring in these kind of international discussions, as I just suggested. I think a really strong pointer there to sign up for the Nature Park. It's great that Amy's here, and I'm sure she will tell you more details of that in a moment. And then be ready for the climate action planning step and help to support that. Watch for those announcements in early December and get involved in that. So just a final kind of plug, hopefully I've got time for that. So our National Climate Education Action Plan Group meets every 6 months online. We often can hear from DFE or others about what the national policy picture is. We're very open to all. You're very welcome to come along if you'd like to. So please do drop us a line and we can include you in the next meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That was fantastic, Andrew. You've not only stuck to time, you've finished before time. So I'm going to, which is amazing. I'm going to ask Matt, if you're with us, if you can just field any questions. We've got a lovely opportunity Andrew will not be with us for the end of the day questions. So now, Andrew, if you're happy to answer any questions, Matt, if you can field any of those that they come in, please. I'm going to open it up. If you want to, members of the audience, if you want to put your hands up or indeed post questions in the comment boxes. Over to you, our audience.
We've got a PM. I can't quite see. We've got a hand up there. Paul Moses.
Paul, go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yeah, it's Paula.
Paula.
Hi.
I beg your pardon, Paula.
No, it's okay. Don't worry. I don't care. What was I going to say now? Yes, sorry. You mentioned that it's more than just the curriculum. However, could you just roughly outline what, if there is anything centrally being done for the primary curriculum about the climate, or is it very much down to the individual trusts and schools?
So I believe, Paula, that there is some review promised in the strategy. So that would certainly be something to take a look at. That work, I think, hasn't progressed so far just yet, but
okay.
It's certainly something that's on the agenda. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a question from Paul.
Hi, this is Paul. Thank you very much for that very efficient rundown, Andrew. I'm just wondering if you have had any purchase with other parts of the DFE, because as some of those charts you were showing were explaining, teacher education is critical, and yet the new core content framework, the early career framework for teaching our teachers in England, doesn't mention climate change or sustainability at any point. And it really needs some joining up to be done. So I'm just wondering, with your good offices within the DFE and the people you know, is there any way of making that change happen?
Thanks, Paul. And I should have said at the start that part of our role as members of the user group is to take as much back as we can. So I certainly will take that back. I know that there's some really fantastic work going on in the sector. So Nasreen, my former colleague, is on the call, I think, who can talk about the excellent work that's going on at UCL on this. We ourselves in Reading have been doing some really excellent work in our initial teacher education. So we have put climate and sustainability throughout all of our initial teacher education, and we have a framework for that. So if anyone is interested in understanding what we've done, and we're very happy to share that, my colleague Joanna Reid Johnson can help with that. So please do drop me a line and we can connect you.
Any other questions from people, either in terms of just putting your hands up or in the comment boxes?
I think that's it for now. I think, Jerry.
Fantastic. Okay, that's really, really good. Andrew, thank you so much. There is so, you've already got my head buzzing from everything that we were saying at the very start of this. Really, really appreciate it. I'm wondering at the moment now, you made some references to Amy's work. I'm wondering whether or not we could bring in Amy now. But Amy, your presentation is 5 minutes, and I'm wondering whether or not, Amy, you'd like to come in. Yeah, 2 minutes, but we can give you a little bit more time. On the programme, you're down there for 5 minutes, which was the mistake I made. Amy, would you like to come in now and present? And I'll sort of, if I slip you in now, then hopefully that would mean that we still are perfectly in time for Kevin's, which will start at 25:02. So Kevin, you're still going to go on as planned. Amy, if you can move into your presentation now, please.
Sure, hopefully you can all see that okay. Andrew, thank you so much for the introduction and flagging up the National Education Nature Park. So I'm Amy Strachan and I'm the Senior Learning Producer, and my work is based at the Natural History Museum, but we also work with lots of other collaborators too. And my role really is to bring together the curriculum and the National Education Nature Park programme. So the whole focus really is to start from this baseline that we are one of the most nature depleted countries in the world. We understand the significance of acting now from the Dasgupta review. We know it's really important to get young people out to connect with nature, with those relationships with well-being and positive mental health. And we also know that, as Andrew mentioned, the importance of addressing those STEM skills to ensure that learners are aware of the many green careers that are out there. So the idea is for the Nature Park to take the areas of all of the nurseries, the schools and the colleges in England, which equates to approximately 2 sizes of Birmingham. So the overall aim of the programme is to empower young people to understand and to learn about the issues related to climate change and biodiversity, and to know that they can do something about it. So developing that real positive connection to nature, understanding the threats and feeling able to do something about it. So you can see there that there are 4 main pillars or programme goals. So using the opportunity to ensure that this is learner-centred, so that we can build biodiversity across educational estate, and for young people to be to own and to be in charge of the decisions that they make to change and to develop. And alongside that, developing those green skills, to ensure that young people are supported to develop pro-environmental behaviours. And obviously the most important one is to improve the well-being of young people. So Andrew also shared one of our graphics there. So already we've had nearly, in fact today, I think it was 900 teachers registered, and now we've actually had 300 school boundaries mapped. So mapping the habitats, or mapping the area of their school site, so they can get ready to start looking at the habitats and the biodiversity within those, so then we can work with our community science teams to develop and enhance that biodiversity. So the idea is really that collective difference, the collective difference that made together to enhance biodiversity across the school site. So working with GIS teams, so a geographical information system, so that young people can actually compare and track and develop lots of skills through the programme. But the importance really is that it's student-led. Now, my whole focus, my background is a teacher, and then as a lecturer in primary science education. And so based on that background, I've been leading the development of the curriculum resources that are in line with our current national curriculum in England, ensuring that ideas and concepts are brought in so as not to have that big cognitive overload, and ensure that young people can cope with the concepts there. So it's informed by best evidence climate pedagogy. It's embedded into the current national curriculum programmes of study, so that teachers can actually, and I won't say kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but they're able to do both at the same time. It supports an understanding of the inherent relationship between climate change and biodiversity, and there is a promotion of the knowledge, the substantive knowledge, the skills, the behaviours and attitudes to support that agency. So the key strands of all of the curriculum resources are to develop that substantive knowledge that teachers need to deliver as part of the curriculum, to promote positive change. So when we're talking about these really complex issues, to ensure that learners feel that agency to make changes themselves and together collectively, to support that resilience through developing that positive relationship with nature, and finally developing those green and the other skills. And then finally, in that, we've tried to bring together some units of learning in line with the curriculum. So providing an alternative to the traditional subject of programme study, fulfilling the curriculum learning outcomes, but also bringing in those nature park pillars that we talked about before. And what we have done is we have worked with a number of amazing organisations, and it's important to say that yes, there are lots of gaps. Yes, we need to continue to develop and build modern and new resources that are engaging and bespoke to climate pedagogy, but we're also making sure that we don't repeat what's out there already. So working with organisations, including all of those on there. And then the other important thing to just say is that all of our resources that have any climate science in them are being quality assured by the Royal Meteorological society, and to ensure that teachers feel that sense of confidence that what they are sharing is both up to date and factually correct from a climate science perspective. And to reiterate what Andrew said, we hope that we can encourage you to go to the Nature Park website. There are lots of webinars on there to get a flavour of the other parts of the programme, and sign up if you're a school. And so thank you for squeezing me in, and hopefully that gave you a flavour of the Nature Park.
Amy, thank you. That was meticulous timing. We can squeeze in a couple of questions. So if anybody would like to either put their hand up electronically or type a question in, Matt will take those questions and field them. Any questions for Amy? Terrific work. It's an invaluable opportunity to engage her in some questions. They are stunned, Amy.
The other thing to add as well is that we're working with all age groups. So there are resources all the way from EYFS all the way through to Key Stage 5. And it's on a rolling basis, so more and more resource will be added across subject areas. And we're working closely with UCL to ensure that our curriculum resources are aligned to all of the amazing work that's happening with UCL and their professional development as well.
That's brilliant, Amy. There's a question from Kim Lawler. I'm just not sure if that's for Amy, Matt, or whether or not that was for.
I will put the details in the chat so that schools can sign up and access those resources.
Fantastic. Oh, I can see the question. Are you Amy, Dominic? This is from. I think we've got Dominic Oakes. Are you working with Wales, Scotland, or Northern Ireland? Good question.
That's a really good question. So currently it's just England based. However, my managers are currently having conversations already with Scotland. So hopefully this is something that we can roll out across the UK and beyond internationally to enhance biodiversity in all school sites.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Amy. Did we? I'm backtracking. We got the question answered from Kim. How do schools sign up? And Paula's question about where are the resources available? Did we get both of those?
Yeah, they're on the website. So again, I'll put all of the details in,
Lovely.
Which is where you can sign up and access those resources.
Brilliant. Amy, thank you so very much indeed. That's a magnificent contribution. And thanks for coming in at the last minute in terms of swapping around on the programme. Thanks a lot. Fantastic. Our third speaker today is Kevin Morgan. Kevin is Professor of Governance and Development at Cardiff University. Kevin, you have the show.
Hi, Jerry. Thanks. Can Amy remove her slides, Jerry?
Yes, Amy. Are you all right doing that, please? We can still see your slides. Maybe, yeah, if you could turn your microphone on. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah,
Amy?
yeah. So it should. I've already unshared them. Let's see if I can get rid of them again. And then unshare. Let's see if I can unshare from there. Stop presenting. Better?
That's great. Yeah, that's fantastic. They've gone. And Kevin, over to you. Brilliant.
Hi, Jerry. Can you see these slides?
We can't yet. We did before when we were doing the test run through.
Yeah. I can see them my end.
We can't see them yet.
I don't see what more I can do to there.
You've got your little. Can you see your little? Whatever you did in the setup that we did before, the kind of dry run through was spot on. If you go to the little white box at the top, which has an arrow, it looks like a little white TV screen with an up pointing arrow, and it says share.
Yeah, that's what I've done. I've got them here.
I'm wondering if Matt, have you got the slides and maybe could you share them? Are you with us, Matt? Matt, are you with us? It's not Matt, sorry, Dan, apologies.
Yeah, sorry, 2 seconds.
My slides are up, Dan. Can you see them?
We can see them.
Okay, I'll try and carry on, Jerry, as they are, okay?
No, lovely, brilliant, and fantastic. Over to you, Kevin.
Okay, afternoon, everybody. I'm Kevin Morgan, based at Cardiff University, where we've been working for many years on school food reform around the world. One of the reasons for that is because we think that the school food is a fantastic index of a society's commitment to sustainability, particularly a society's commitment to public health, social justice, and ecological integrity. And that's a good test for any society, it seems to us. So I'll try and move these slides on, Jerry, and see what happens.
Perfect.
So this is what I want to talk about in the next few minutes. These 3 themes about sustainable foodscapes for people and planet. I want to take a good practice example from our work from Malmö in southern Sweden. And then I want to talk about how the school meal can become a very, very powerful pedagogical tool. So moving on very quickly to sustainable foodscapes. Our work on sustainable foodscapes looks at both the people and the planet dimensions, because policies tend to focus on one or the other. In terms of looking at childhood nutrition and childhood well-being, the school meal is absolutely critical. And sadly, so many children around the world, particularly in Asia and Africa, are still not getting a good school meal. So we shouldn't ever take it for granted. On the right, you can see the planet-focused work that we do, looking at the greenhouse gas emissions of various food products. And although you can't read it because it's too small, let me tell you that the top bar is beef and the second bar is lamb. So we can see what a powerful effect red meat has in terms of their carbon footprints. And this is why great school food strategies around the world are trying to shift the diet towards more plant-based protein, which is a big challenge for everyone involved, as we'll see in a moment, even in great school food services like Malmö. I look at Malmö because back in 2010, we worked with the city team where they said that they've got a major new strategy for school food, and it's got 2 aims: children's health and planetary carbon footprints. And they've had these 2 clear twin goals since 2010. Let me look at them very, very briefly. In terms of the overall strategy, it's called SMART, and it stands for all these dimensions that you can read for yourselves here. But the SMART strategy is the design framework for the reform of school food systems in the Malmö city area. The 2 main goals of the strategy: number 1 is organic food. When the mayor first told me that he planned to go fully organic in a cost-neutral way, I thought that was mission impossible, because organic food, as we all know, is more expensive. But the way they've done that is to redesign the menu. So they've taken some meat out of the menu and they've radically reduced waste. And those 2 innovations in menu design has helped to create new resources by which they've been able to procure organic foodstuffs. There's been a lot of pushback from parents about the introduction of plant-based diets, because parents feared that their children were being served, quote, protein-free food. And suddenly the city realized it had a big educational job to do to engage parents. So they did the right thing. They invited parents to come in to eat a school lunch and to discuss plant-based protein. So engagement is a very, very important part of changing diets, of changing behavior, even in very, very poor, deprived communities. The parental engagement, children's engagement play a big role as we try to promote more sustainable school food systems. So organic food is one dimension of the Malmo strategy. And then there's the planetary dimension of reducing carbon footprints. You can see here how Malmo is trying to reduce their footprint by 40% by 2020. They're still a little way off this target, but you can see the incredible progress that the city has made, largely by reducing meat from their diets. And this is an important part of the global strategy for sustainable school food. Food for Life is one of the UK programs for sustainable food, and we call it the whole school approach. The whole school approach basically, in simple terms, means the goal of aligning the message in the classroom with the messages in the dining room and in all vending machines throughout the school. Oftentimes we see a disconnect between the classroom where they teach about sustainability and the dining room where they serve junk food. That kind of misalignment needs to be overcome so that we begin to align and synchronize the message in the classroom with the message in the dining room. And let me conclude by saying this. Make 2 points about the challenge ahead for school food reform. I've focused on Malmo because Malmo is one of the best examples of good practice in the whole of Europe. But all our work suggests that good practice is a bad traveller. It doesn't travel itself. One needs to identify good practice and one needs to disseminate it, because our work in Wales showed the best local authority lived next door to the worst. Cheek by jowl, the best and the worst. Why didn't that good practice spill over from one local authority to another? One of the great mysteries of the school food research environment. The second message I wanted to mention is that we've got a wonderful opportunity now in the United Kingdom for spreading the whole school approach everywhere. And that opportunity lies in the new rollout of the most exciting school food programme that we've had in the UK since the welfare state was formed in the 1940s. And that programme is called Universal Free School Meals for all children in primary schools. That's a commitment that's been made by the Scottish Government. It's a commitment that's been made by the Welsh Government. And it's a commitment that's been made in 5 London boroughs. The question is, why doesn't England catch up with Scotland, Wales and London boroughs? This is going to be a big challenge for the next government next year. And we need to ensure that universal free school meals becomes a right and not a privilege for every child, because hungry children can never learn. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I feel I regret the fact that we've only had you for 10 minutes. I could have listened to you quite happily for an hour. I'm hoping that you will stay with us until the end of the session. I suspect that your amazing talk will have prompted so many opportunities for people to think about posing questions in respect to England catching up the other 3 nations. I think we've got so much catching up to do on so many different levels in terms of what's happening elsewhere across the UK. A brilliant presentation, Kevin. Thank you very much. Stay with us for the rest of the session, and we'll have lots and lots of questions from our audience afterwards. Our next speaker is Denise McKeown. Have I got that right, Denise?
Yeah.
Thank you, Denise. Denise is with us, joining us from South Island School in Hong Kong. We're incredibly lucky to have you, Denise. Denise, the presentation is all over now with you.
Thanks so much, Jerry. That was really great talk as well, Kevin. And yeah, it's really heartening to have heard from everybody about all the things that we're doing to to tackle these problems. So I think you'll see some parallels in mine. I'm really grateful to be here. I'm in South Island School, where I'm a chemistry teacher, and I'm also the sustainability curriculum lead, and I coordinate student activities, the student council for that. I'm going to start my talk by showing you this illustration that I created. It was made as a provocation for Dr. Linda Dunlop and Professor Elizabeth Rushton's manifesto for education and environmental sustainability. It was basically made so that it would provoke some questions. So I've used farming as an analogy for the classroom. So down the bottom, I have the monoculture, which is a really highly managed environment, which is designed because you value one life over all the rest. And you'll actively and systematically remove those other pieces that you don't value. And anything else that compromises that end product. So it's because it's highly managed, and I've shown that in the analogy with the rows of corn being grown. It allows you to mechanize that, make that process much faster. And basically all that is so that you can make your product more efficient. But it's this management that makes a monoculture so inherently vulnerable. So even like a slight shift in the environmental conditions, the ones that you can't control, so things like the climate or the weather, can topple the entire system. So it's that fragility that I wanted to come across. And to put that another way, the most resilient communities, the most resilient systems are the ones with the most diversity. So I called this Against the Grain. I felt like this picture wasn't complete without looking at what drives that system or that culture. And that's important to consider who benefits and also who pays the price. I think that's one of the big questions that sustainability education needs to address. Within that drive, I've got two people saying something. I'll in case you can't see them, I'll just tell you what they say. The farmer is saying, removing all non-essential thinking helped to improve the yield. And with that, I was playing with the idea that in the drive for results, there is something that you give up. There's something that you forego in order to make those gains. In the illustration, I called that non-essential thinking, and I think that happens in our school systems as well. Whatever we categorize as non-essential. In nature, this might be something like a hardier coat or a different texture, a different color. And so it's worth pointing out that corn isn't just yellow, but that's the only choice that we get. And it's the same thing that happens when you have a culture that favors one thing. There is a cost to us, and that is that we lose those other adaptions. We lose them unless somebody chooses to protect them. And so I called that profit at our expense, which I think is something that we need to be careful to avoid going forward. Another happy result of a monoculture for the drivers is that over time, eventually you're able to alter the plants themselves. So you can choose which biological expressions they have. And I parodied this in the analogy with bigger and bigger ears of corn. I think this happens in the school systems as well, where we tend to favor students who have better skills in listening and compliance. And that also has downfalls for the students who succeed and thrive in that environment. Because when you're successful in a highly managed environment, you become very reliant and dependent on those inputs and those parameters in those systems. And that's just another vulnerability. And I think that also happens in our students. And I see it as a type of helplessness, which affects their ability to think beyond a different subject, or how things relate beyond those topics or disciplines. I've also had the businessman say something to that effect as well, that they won't be able to change fields. And that kind of refers to this culture of staying in one field or one discipline that I think also affects adults. And we have this, or people who have grown up in this system. So there's that compartmentalization of thinking and doing and operating in careers. And I think that those barriers and structures that have allowed something to flourish, they've removed the competition and made it easier to manage, but it also keeps them stuck. What I think we need to counterbalance this is this sort of cross-pollination of ideas, of people working across those fields and disciplines. And I think until we address that, it really costs us that cross-pollination. Moving forward or looking ahead, we have huge environmental change. This graph could be carbon dioxide parts per million. It could be the rise of tech. And I think that sustainable education and education for sustainability needs to prepare students for this journey. On my next slide, I'll outline a little bit about how I think that could or should be designed, and it echoes a lot of what's been spoken about today. This is my other analogy for curriculum for sustainability, and I use a bicycle because it's often used to describe what's known as an emergent property. So that's when the pieces of the bicycle themselves couldn't do what they can do together. And that's where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Sometimes people describe it. It also provides a really nice visual contrast to the ways in which I think curriculum for sustainability needs to be different to what we've had before, or some of those problems I was talking about. It's dynamic, first and foremost. It's empowering rather than passive and managed. And I'll just zoom in a little bit on some of those key pieces to work with the different pieces and how they work together. So at the front, I've put knowledge. It's going to be really directional. It's going to be the bit that responds to the feedback from the environment. So it's place-based, giving that feedback instantly to the writer. At the back, I've put skills, which I think really support that motion and bear the weight. There's obviously that small but crucial piece in the middle, the bits that the chain and the crank on the bicycle. In a curriculum level, I've suggested that this is creativity. Creativity and linking, I think, are those pieces that are capable of doing so much more.
Couple of minutes, Denise.
Yeah. Great, thank you. This and the other pieces, like the critical lens and the maps that they read, is what I think we can do to support the students to navigate those challenges, and the different cascade of consequences that will happen as a result of climate change. On my final slide, I'll just show you what I think creativity looks like on a bigger scale, which is diversity. That's diversity of inputs, that's diversity of opportunities, expression, and it's that which allows that cross-pollination of those ideas. And I think us at the forefront of supporting students for that, I think what we can do is create that environment and that culture to nurture that and make space for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise, so much. There's a comment from Fengling Tang, Denise, to something that you said a little bit earlier, saying that this also reflects Humboldt's view of nature as a holistic interplay of phenomenon. If you can stay with us, Denise, throughout, I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions and comments. I had the joy of seeing Jane's face nodding at various stages to what you were saying. So I'm looking forward to Jane's presentation in terms of following on beautifully from yours. Thank you very, very much indeed. We've got lots more coming everybody's way. Our last speaker before we move to the next section, which will be the breakout rooms, and then we'll have a fantastic Q&A with everybody involved today. We have our final speaker at this stage is Dr. Jane Essex, senior lecturer at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. Jane, it is over to you.
Thank you very much. I've now made it up to reader. I'm very happy and slightly surprised to announce. So there you go. I applied for this a while ago.
Well, I think we just need to pause and congratulate you on that. I can remember getting it's a massive deal. Massive congratulations, Jane.
Jerry, I don't want to cut into the talk, but 12 years of actively pursuing, 9 rejections and 3 appeals.
I'm with you.
To get to senior lecturer. So reader was a breeze. Thank you. Right. My interest is in STEM learning by learners with disabilities, in particular global learning difficulties. And I shamelessly hijacked an initiative at Strathclyde, which was about amplifying impact, and had the pleasure, real privilege of running 2 STEM summer schools, one with children in alternative settings, and one of them particularly focused on sustainability. And I want just to pause and think that this group of learners, like a number of others, are commonly excluded from the climate debate, not because we mean to, but because we don't recognise the additional support they help. And I'd like to acknowledge Linda Dunlop and Lizzie Rushton too, because I've worked with them, and I specifically work with them to make sure that the sort of learners I'm really interested in had their voices represented in democratic consultation exercises they were running. And they did speak, and they had a lot to say to Linda. So the picture shows a group of learners thinking about water quality, and though you can't see it, they're looking at a Californian water worm. It's a thing you get in a fishing shop, which can be used as a bioindicator of water quality. If the water quality is good, the worms swim well. If the water is polluted, they don't. And this is one of what the photo shows 2 researchers from Strathclyde who came and ran workshops for the young people about their research, what they're finding out, why it will impact on sustainability. And this project focused very intentionally on this excluded audience, and they're excluded because they live in an area of coastal poverty. They are in specialist provision. Their teachers aren't science or technology specialists. They don't have access to, for instance, labs in their specialist provision. And often the mainstream school judges their behaviour as too high risk to be in any kind of lab or workshop setting. And the other thing is, if you're on the coast, you're a long way from the sort of places that offer you these STEM learning experiences like science centres and universities and so on. And so for all those reasons, I went basically after my audience. And just a pause to say, if you were a science teacher, Denise, you'll recognise what they're doing. They've got circuit kits out. They're going great guns. They're actually they were testing different arrangements of solar cells for this one. So it was really interesting that they were very interested in sustainability. They were really able to engage conceptually, particularly when they had hands-on experience of the sort of phenomena around the notion of sustainability, pollution, energy quote unquote production. I know it's wrong. I'm not a physicist, forgive me. And it was a very interesting project in a number of ways. It was supposed to be about the academics extending their impact, which it clearly did, because none of them had ever worked with these kind of learners before. But it was done under the auspices of the STEM Equals scheme, and it talked to Marco, who was on the delegate list, because he's been one of the co-leaders of that, which aimed to give academics from underrepresented backgrounds in big bid writing experience that might support them to write big bids later, and getting their impact profile raised was one of these. So it meant that the researchers who came out to meet the diverse learners were particularly diverse themselves. Now, I have taught sustainability at undergraduate level, and I was very taken when I did so with the notion of hardware and software. That the academics were busy coming up with hardware for sustainability, better solar cells, better ways to purify water, more efficient ways to manufacture essential things. But it's that final mile, the users, the software, that are ultimately going to affect whether these initiatives will have the environmental impact that they can have. Because nobody's invention will have impact if it's not used. And so I was really interested in getting the researchers and an under-considered audience together to talk to each other. And I have to pay huge tribute to my colleague Martin Hendry at Strathclyde, who was so bonkers. He said, it helped me. We've done it twice now, and we've had a brilliant time doing it. And I think this notion of sustainability being achieved step by step, and I think that also means audience step by step. So not imagining we communicate sustainability with the whole of the nation of Scotland or the whole of the UK or the whole of the world, that we need to think about reaching out to different groups in different ways. Now, just for the record, in case you think, well, Jane, that was a great summer, you enjoyed yourself, you got sunshine in the west coast of Scotland, good grief. The young people really did learn from this. And if you don't believe me, go and ask Linda Dunlop, because she went and talked to the young people afterwards and was really impressed. They also had a visitor from a big multinational chemical company who had got interested in it, went to visit the youngsters and was just blown away with the understanding that they could represent. Not that they could talk in the same academic terms as the researchers and academics who came, but they really had got some key ideas under their belt, and they were really able to explain it in quite some depth. Okay, here's a few points, and I think this really links to the nature park. When we asked them at the end about how they understood sustainability, and obviously we had to assess it in an inclusive and accessible way. We had young people who were non-verbal, we had young people who were not literate. So the device I used was we're going to make a time capsule for young people in 100 years doing a sustainability summer school like you. What would you like to leave for those young people to find in 100 years? So they put in objects, some of them drew on cards, some of them painted a stone, put it in. But there was this really strong feel in the evidence that their global understanding of sustainability was massively shaped by what they had physically experienced. The beach, the waves, the seaweed, the jellyfish, looking at the water worms. And I think that sense of sustainability as a wide concept through the local and specific is very important. And I think things like nature parks are a great way of doing that. Secondly, when we talk about curriculum and assessment, I think at our peril, we overlook the emotional, the affective response of young people to their environment.
One more minute, Jane.
Yeah, I'm on it. And that was very strong, particularly notable for these learners who weren't too cool to express it. but they really had learnt. And here's a few of the postcards they dropped in the box. The final bit of good news is it wasn't just the young people who learned. We made a lot of effort to reach them by cutting out barriers. We laid on buses for them. We gave them lunch. There was no cost to attend. We lent them equipment if they needed. But the spin-off, and the way I could justify it back to Strathclyde, was that the researchers really enjoyed it, learnt a lot. One of them said, I have totally rethought what it is to teach since I worked that day with you and those young people. And I think I would like to say that if we want to get sustainability, we need to think harder about that UN goal for sustainable development, about quality education for all. And that's me. Thank you, Jerry.
Jane, thank you so much. Amy Strachan came in a couple of minutes ago saying we've got people, lots of people actually clapping. I'm not sure if you can see those, and hearts, everything coming up there. Amy Strachan says creating opportunities / spaces to create a positive vision for the future of their local area. And then Marco Reggiani, I hope I've pronounced that right. Marco.
Hi, Marco.
Says, great presentation, Jane. Thanks for the shout out to STEM Equals in case you are interested to know more about that. And Marco has given has actually posted something there. And Amy again coming in saying amazing work, amazing work. Reader Jane Essex. There we go.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you very much, Jane. I'm hoping you'll stay with us because I know that there will be lots of questions and comments and discussion for you and for Denise. Denise, you've also got some more comments in there. Thank you both very much indeed. We have a lovely opportunity now to engage with discussion, debate, questions. Andrew, it's great to see you. I wasn't sure that we were going to have you with us. Have we got you for a few more minutes, have we?
Yeah, I have to leave at 6. That's all, Jerry. So
that's brilliant. So Matthew and I are now ready to take questions from everybody about everything. Before we move to questions, I wonder if we can just ask our 3 presenters, or at least representatives from each of those presenters. Nazreen, I didn't get a chance, and we didn't get a chance to meet you before today's session. I wonder, Nazreen, if you can just give us a sort of a 60-second précis of your lovely workshop, please.
Well, I don't want to do the children a disadvantage, because actually children were the sort of key players of the presentation that was done in the breakout rooms. But essentially, the project was very much kind of aligned with Nicola Walsh's research on eco capabilities and how we can use nature to and the arts to connect with nature in order to support pupil well-being. So there was a range of activities that were done, including having an artist in residence who and the children worked with this artist to develop a living willow sculpture called Just Be, and that's the hub now where children's curriculum ideas that they've developed are being used on a regular basis through the student ambassadors working with the rest of the pupils in schools, and that's a continuum that's a legacy of the project. But in addition to that, I think the skill sets that the children have developed and the way they have articulated their ideas are the kind of lasting legacy and the ideas that they will take away with them beyond the scope of their primary education as well.
That sounds amazing, Nazreen. Nazreen, I'm not sure to what extent Sarah had that conversation with you before today, but we would love to get your involvement. And I mean, with Lucy and with Jim, I'm not quite sure. I saw Jim in the list of people that was here. I haven't had a chance to say hello to Lucy, but we'd love to get you included in the special edition that we're putting out for the Vera blog for today's event. So, because that work sounds too important. I wonder if we can then jump to Di Swift. Can you give everybody a little bit of a summary of what your lovely session was about, please?
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. So we talked about, we'd worked with a group of teachers using a curriculum design model. So we talked about the way that maybe curriculum design comes actually before curriculum making, picking up on some of the things that Andrew was saying about teacher knowledge and being able to work together. We were able to use our funding so that we had 3 days working together and 1 day visiting each other in school. So we talked about actually sustaining ourselves as professionals being able to sustain our knowledge so that we could empower and enable our young people, and this connection between that investment in teachers and being able to inspire young people. So we ended up talking about the importance of teacher agency, our own investment in really getting to grips with a gritty concept like sustainability in order to motivate ourselves, the joy of teaching, and resisting some of the off-the-shelf solutions, curriculum solutions that are actually not locally relevant. So we took the same principle, but were able to realise it differently and appropriately within our own settings.
Fantastic, Di. Thank you very much. And Maruf, very briefly, please, your fantastic session as well, please. Maruf, are you with us? Maruf, are you with us? I can see you, but your screen's frozen and your mic's off. Maruf, we'll come back to you in a second. Matt, I can see comments coming in. Are there any comments that you want to particularly sort of just choose to sort of highlight before we move into questions?
Yeah, just some lovely reflections, really. I mean, I was in Di Swift's session, and so there's some really nice reflections on the collaborative element of Di's work and how you know, they'd used the grant funding really to, you know, co-create that curriculum. And then there was also, I mean, I wonder if Di would expand on it, because they were able to weave in not just teachers, you know, collaborations with you, but how they did that with students too. I think it might be worth just getting a bit of time hearing about that.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So one of the ways that we worked, we used mind maps as a pre and post evaluation. So in the session I shared a couple of the year 3 ones, and we've got examples from each of the year groups from Key Stage 2 in the report. But interestingly, the children, whilst this word is bandied about and so significant for them, they weren't able to begin with to make connections between their prior learning and this word sustainability. So one of our lovely year 3 pupils put sustainability is about sussing things out, which of course, maybe. They also talked about something for 16 plus. So what we did was then at the end of our sequences of learning, we visited each other in schools and got the children to talk about the mind maps that they completed at the end. And the children were able to make connections, and we would like to think that they were able to make the connections because we as teachers had had the time to invest in planning and made those connections far more explicit. So the young people were able to make connections. We used the Brundtland definition of sustainability. They were able to bring in the economic, the social, the environment. They were able to bring in some of the dilemmas. They were able to use their examples, and they were able to talk to each of us as teachers visiting them very confidently. They were able to draw on those experiences.
Thank you, Di, very much. Maruf, you're back with us, which is great. If you can turn your microphone on and just get a very brief summary of your lovely project, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Jerry. So we are talking about actually the engaging our disadvantaged and marginalized students in terms of designing an introductory course on climate change, sustainability, and social justice. So in we talk about actually how we design, how we involve, so that it evolved from the conversation we had with our student and colleagues from a very interdisciplinary manner. It's not like bringing people from only one department, people from different department, and how actually that give us the understanding, and also like the kind of surprising findings which is actually we see from our college-wise across the college, because we have 12 colleges together. So people come up with surprising kind of feedback who are not all involved in the main workshop where we developed it. So that's what we try to do, and in the next step what we'll be doing in terms of developing material and offering the course to the student. Thank you.
Fantastic, Maruf. Matt, I can see more comments coming in.
Yeah, I've got a question from Sophie Mackay. I think it's Sophie Mackay, but and I'll pass over to Sophie, but her questions about how we move beyond nature connectedness. I don't know if Sophie, you want to phrase your question yourself?
Yes, I mean, my own research is around kind of taking a post-human perspective on environmental education. And so, I mean, it's really interesting in the project that West Lodge was talking about how we do environmental education for benefiting the whole community. And I'm interested in how people talk about nature education. And a lot of the discussion is around well-being and how it benefits people. But I'm just kind of wondering to what extent there's a focus on thinking about the well-being of nature kind of at the forefront rather than just how it benefits us, because that seems to be how we've got into a problem, is by having a kind of anthropocentric perspective on nature, that it's something that benefits us, but we need to do more to benefit it. And I was just wondering how that kind of turning that around is taking kind of nature first perspective is addressed.
Great to have you with us today, Sophie. I hadn't realised you were joining us. Fantastic to have you with us. I could see Jane and Di nodding furiously. Jane, can I bring you in maybe? Because I could see you nodding to Sophie's point.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think it's, I just found that the learners that I focused on, it was getting them to relate emotionally to this wider world and seeing that all these different things, they were like the jellyfish and whatever, in the sense that when sea levels rose, they were all going to be in difficulty. And I think the trouble with it, all this sort of attitudinal shift, it's slow. I mean, Di, you talked about maybe doing 4 lessons or something on sustainability, but it takes a long time, and we're going to need an absolutely spiral curriculum approach with it, particularly because that will enable those learners who don't access key concepts first time to come back to them and revisit when they've matured further. And I just feel you're right that young people can take a non-anthropocentric view, but we have to actively go out there to support them in seeing the world different ways.
Di, do you want to pick up on that? And then I'll be curious to know what a professor of meteorology has to say about that. So let's go to Di, because obviously there's a direct link from what Sophie's question was to Di, and then from Di over to Andrew, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. So I think I'll pick up on Jane's point first about those concepts, and something that Andrew put in the chat. I think it's so important. And in our project, it was making explicit those connections with those abstract concepts. How do you make those visible so that they become a learning resource with the children? And because we use the curriculum design coherence model, we were very conscious about the specializing and organizing power of a concept like such as sustainability, but it needs to be made visible, and we need to be very conscious of the way that we're working with it and revisiting and revisiting and revisiting and revisiting, so that we and the young people can draw on a range of perspectives. So that post-humanist perspective, that young people will build up that complexity and that more diffractive approach if we're able to make those connections and they're able to draw on a range of perspectives so that they can think beyond the human.
I'd like to bring, after Andrew, Denise in, because this is also your world, isn't it? So Andrew first, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. I mean, obviously, I'm someone who comes very much from the kind of scientific perspective, right? So I come from a perspective of thinking about the world, you know, absent from humans to some degree. But so I think I kind of agree with everything that Jane and Di said there. I think just to kind of link back a little bit to the climate action planning work, you know, what we're talking about here is kind of systems change, right? And so involving young people as appropriate in those plans, making young people own those plans and seeing the change in their own communities, in their own schools and colleges, is such a powerful way of engaging people, engaging young people throughout. So it's not just about the formal education, it's about them seeing, you know, as the example from West Lodge gave us so powerfully, seeing the change happening in a place where they are every single day, being involved in that, being involved in the decision making as much as that's possible. And I guess that's why I'm particularly excited that these climate action plans involve that change within the school estate, within the school grounds, as much as they do the education, because I think that ultimately that will lead to better outcomes for the young people.
Thanks, Andrew. Denise, I'm going to bring in after Denise and Nazreen, because the area that you're working in is directly related to this. Let's go to Denise first, and then Nazreen, I'll bring you in, please.
I think you're right. The anthropocentric view is a problem, like how we try to subjugate that kind of environment. I think I spoke to that a little bit, and I think that to neutralize that, we need to value the diversity for its own purpose, rather than just what it can do for humans, or what it can do for us. And I kind of alluded to how that would fit in the curriculum with like those lenses, that critical lens for how you view it, which is what Di was also talking about with those perspectives. And that's another reason why I like to use analogies, because it can help take you out of those perspectives and show you a different view. Yeah.
Thanks, Denise. I can see that Jim Dees has got his hand up, so we'll go to Jim after Nazreen. Nazreen.
I was just going to say, I'm going to pass over to Jim because I think he'll have a really interesting insight into the question, to be fair.
Jim, we can't see you yet, but hopefully your mic's working.
Okay, hello, thank you. Yeah, so it's such an important question, and I think it kind of talks about really the difference between nature contact and nature connection. And so kind of contact with nature is what makes people feel better, but that's actually not true nature connection. Nature connection, then, you know, we're certainly not there, but what we're trying to do is kind of nudge thinking to a more ecocentric, from an egocentric perspective to a more ecocentric perspective, where we see ourselves as part of the interconnected web of life rather than at the top of a hierarchy. And that's where we've kind of, the beginning of this term, really trying to think about what we mean by the term sustainability. So we looked at the Brundtland definition, and actually thinking about that, it kind of implicit within it is a very anthropocentric view of life. And so we've tried to, within ours, think about what we call the community of life rather than the community. So and kind of reference the ecosphere within there. We recently opened a new outdoor classroom, and so kind of one way we try and nudge that thinking is about how we really think about the spaces that we're using, and how that impacts on nature and how we use them in a way that enables nature to thrive. So we were kind of using a dead space to create this outdoor classroom, but inevitably we would have affected some small habitats in some way. So when we created it, we purposely created some new habitats, and all the children took part in that. And our pledge, we kind of wrote a pledge that kind of emphasized our part as a small part of nature and connecting to the whole process. So that's the kind of journey that we're attempting to travel on.
Many thanks, Jim. Sophia, I think I'd like to take it back to you. You've just stimulated a fantastic conversation. Any thoughts on what you've just heard?
I think that's really interesting and really good to know that you know, people, you know, from the kind of practical level and in school are kind of thinking about that kind of perspective. I was just really interested to know, because I guess I've been reading about it from my own doctoral research, and it's quite nice to just get it out there and see how people are addressing it. So thanks for all your answers and the recommended Bestia reading as well. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff. Next question from anybody, or point, doesn't have to be a question, it can be quite simply voicing an opinion. Marif.
Well, I have a question for anyone want to answer, because I find it from my experience that believing on something is not always working in terms of change, because everyone want change, but very few people want it to be changed. So how actually we do that in practice in terms of when we are, feeding our student about the information or building the awareness. So how awareness could be translated into practice?
I'm going to jump to Denise, because I could see Denise smiling straight away as you were making that comment. Denise, any thoughts?
Sure. No, I think it's, or at least what I interpreted from your point there was, yeah, I come back to this a lot with students. It's about the motivation. Is the motivation there? How strong it is? How strong is it in order to give something up to achieve the goals that we want? And I think that's always a question I begin with. What's motivating students? Yeah. Thanks.
There's a question from Fenling.
Thanks, Matt. Fengling, go ahead.
Okay, so this is just a comment because I was with Jim, Nursery, Lucy, and the Year 5, amazing children. So they were part of the presentation, and the children's authentic participation through their project and the connection they made with nature, I think truly shows their approach, yeah, from the egocentric, yeah, to the eco, connection. I think that was really amazing, and I think I was really very much empowered by how we can, in a way, engage with children at such young age. We more often talk about young people, but we say the power of those young children, yeah, engaged in such amazing project. So really well done to the research project and amazing children as well. So just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you
very much. Andrew.
Yeah, I guess just to pick up on the point that both Maruf and Fengling made, I think the young people themselves are really ready for this change, and I think it's actually, if we note why this has got such a groundswell of support, that has largely been driven by young people. They tend to be, older young people than we've heard from today, but I think that speaks to a kind of wider groundswell of need, and I think actually the urgency that we all feel is because there is this large group of young people who are demanding this change. They're demanding to learn about these topics and have the skills to go forward. They kind of see the future. And so, Jamie Okomba, SOS UK, always makes the point that we'd be doing them a huge disservice, actually. We won't be providing them with a good quality education if we avoid this. So I think that's where the change comes from. And we have to harness the energy and the knowledge and the care that young people have put into this themselves.
Thank you, Andrew. Matt, anything your end?
Well, there was a few. There were a few likes to Emma Rawling Smith's comment about Gert Biester's book, and I wondered why she felt that was pertinent or relevant.
Emma, do you want to come and join us?
Yeah, apology, I couldn't be here for the whole session, but on Biester, I just think that there's something really important about thinking about education and its purpose, and the fact that we educate young people in the world, and it's actually that we need to pay attention to the world, because it's not the world that's going to, be destroyed by sort of human sort of actions. It's the human race. So actually, that paying attention to the place in which we live, I think, is a really important message that the world should be giving to us in terms of our education. And I think that young people are acutely aware of that, because they know that their future, is at stake because of, inaction now. And so I think it's probably a message to us as educators to think about, well, how are we going to actually sort of take our heads out of the sand and make the difference and make the changes that are necessary? And just on the point of COVID, I thought that COVID was perhaps a moment where we might have that sort of it could be different. We can reimagine what education can look like. And then very quickly, we saw almost like a speeding up of this teaching to the test kind of approach to get the data that we'd missed in those lost, months. And I just think that we need to learn as educators, as a system, how to make changes.
As I said in my introduction to today's event, I think the pandemic gave us all, amidst the horrors, the obvious ones, which we don't need to sort of go into, it did give us, gave so many of us a reflective pause for thought. And I still hope there are opportunities there, but it frightens me that we haven't picked up more on that. More comments.
This might be an interesting link back to Amy Strachan, because there was a point or question raised earlier which I couldn't ask because my mic wasn't working, so apologies. But there was a question asked about Amy's work around the nature park units of learning, approaching things in an alternative to traditional subject programs of study, which sounds like there might be a nice link if Amy wanted to expand on that point between.
Amy was with us, and she has just left. With us. She sent a lovely message, but I think left us about 10 minutes ago.
Well, I wonder maybe whether she could answer that in her blog, because I think that would be quite interesting.
Fantastic. Yeah, very good. Very good. We'll come back to the blogs in a moment. But yeah, great suggestion, Matt. More comments, more questions, more irks.
I think, Jerry, I just wanted to kind of add the real emerging ideas of leadership, and what that looks like for climate and sustainability education across the kind of spectrum of educators. And I think it's really, really integral to kind of really understand what the nature of leadership looks like within this context, and actually how leaders currently are empowering their communities to really look at this problem in a very kind of dynamic way. And I've seen that through the work I've been developing and continue to develop with West Lodge in terms of the way they're approaching the ideas. Every time I've gone, to Jim and the team to kind of say, oh, let's think about this idea, and it's very much kind of a team involvement, including the whole community, the children and the wider community as well. So I think that's absolutely critical to the successful development of this area, and sort of building on what Andrew was talking about in terms of sort of the action planning and what that looks like, and how that can kind of move forward as well. That's kind of at the critical mass point of how this work will kind of play out now, but definitely in the future as well.
It's a great point, Nazreen, for obvious reasons, and I could see Maruf smiling as you were saying. I mean, as a leader within your own context, admittedly with older learners, do you want to come back on Nazreen on what she's just said there, Maruf?
Yes, actually, I want to make another point in relation to that as well, because what I see in terms of the organization, especially when we talk about the policy and we see the power and politics within the organization, which hampered the change in relation to what actually should be the priority in the organization. It's not about actually what needs to be done and who is doing it. That kind of dilemma is in there. But in terms of what you mentioned, young children and older, like our post-16 kind of student, one thing I see, like being a parent, I see when actually children pick up things from primary school in terms of the good thing about environmental behavior, when they see the contradiction, when their parents are, or people around, adult people around, are messing up with the environment, and over the time actually they are their thinking change in a way that they are doing it, maybe it doesn't matter. So couples of the response I got, I was really shocked to see even this adult student are making in relation to climate change, which is really unbelievable in terms of what someone mentioned a few days ago about the survey. What actually reflects 3% still in the UK believe that the Earth.
Oh, I'm wondering if we've lost Marav. While we're
yeah, I'm just wondering if you pick. I think Andrew might want to respond to Nazreem's point on leadership too, as well. Actually, well, there's a pause there.
Thanks, Marav. Well, just while you froze, we're going to move over to Andrew. But thank you for that, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks. It was just to pick up on what Nazreem was saying. I mean, I think Jim's example is a really great one. That leadership matters hugely here. I think. That again, coming back to the strategy, supporting sustainability leads in settings is an important part of that, and I'm sure that's something that DFE will be working on over the next year or so. One thing that Amy didn't mention is the Climate Leaders Award, which will be part of the Nature Park, and that will be at setting level, at school level, and so really kind of surfacing examples like the ones we've heard from today. Is hugely motivating for others and hugely beneficial in driving the whole sector forward, I think.
I'm going to, unless I don't think we've got any more questions, Matt, you're right. I'm going to sort of draw things to a close in these final 3 minutes. The first thing I want to say from both Matt, I'm sure you want to do some thanks as well. I'll give you a chance first of all to say your thanks to everybody here.
Yeah, it's just been fascinating. I'm a head teacher myself. I sit on the BCF, but it's just been incredible and really insightful and inspiring to hear, the work that's going on in this field. And just thank you to all our contributors, and a special thanks to Sarah, who's mainly been the driving force of pulling this and bringing us all together tonight. So feel very grateful to have been here tonight and listened to it all.
Thanks, Matt. Dan, are you with us by any chance? And if you are, can you just very quickly join us? It's about the evaluation for today's session. Did you manage to pick anything up on that at all?
I'm going to take a copy of the transcript. I'll happily send out a form post-event and sort of go from there. Yeah, I'll just make like a Google form-esque thing and send that out.
That would be great if we can ask you just to do that, just to help us in terms of just make these events better. In terms of today's event, Matt and I are really thanking you on behalf of Sarah, who obviously Sarah and Matt put this event together. And it's just a shame that Sarah couldn't be here to enjoy it. I'm hoping now that she's either having a cup of coffee or perhaps a stiff drink after. For those of you that joined us later on, poor old Sarah had an Ofsted inspection today, which is why she couldn't do it. From my point of view, as former chair of the BCF and somebody that's passionate about everything we do with BCF and BERA, I'd like to ask everybody here to do two things, or it may be one thing if that's what works for you. For those of you that are what we used to call Twitter and have X, using X now, if you can, all of you, have you got your accounts, can you tweet today's event? Can you post today's event? Can you post it, if possible, referring to the BCF doing it, but make some comment. The topic that you've been presenting and discussing today is too serious for us not to sort of walk away from today to this being yet just another online event. And I think the people that have been presenting today, the people that are with us today, and as you know, the people that have been asking questions, you are all formidable in your own right. It would be really good if this evening I could sort of just be watching and scanning and just to see what comments you're making about some of the points that you've made today. I said right at the very outset that we have got a special account set up for this. It is #BERA with capital letters _ and then the word climate with a capital C. So I'll say that again, #BERA capital letters _ the word climate with a capital C. By all means do it through that, or tweet, post, whatever the correct terminology is, on your own right. Just a couple of other comments I'd like to make. I want to thank all of the speakers. Like I said at the beginning, everybody that was speaking today, it would be really, really good if in the next couple of days I'll be emailing you. I'd love you to, as Sarah agreed, with you to get everything that you've been saying as much as possible into a big special edition of the BERA blog. The joy with the BERA blog is that it goes out, it's completely open access, it goes out to just over 200 countries in the way that it does, and the BERA Bytes stuff works as resources. So if you think very carefully now retrospectively, this stuff can work as beautiful downloadable resources, whether or not they are teaching resources for A-level students or at the other end doctoral courses. Thanks, Jim. Thanks very much for that. I think the final sort of shopping business element I want to say is that from the point of view of BERA, unrelated to today's event, there are a couple of calls out at the moment relevant for people that are here today. The first is the teacher network, which BERA are setting up to be launched next year. BERA is searching for a teacher network convener because this is a new network. It's a new particular area that BERA is getting involved with. There will be a lot of BERA resources being piled into this. So if you are a teacher or you have got colleagues that are teachers, this is a fantastic opportunity to get teachers raising their voice, their research profile, and everything else that comes along with the BERA package. So please have a look at that. The call is out on the BERA website. The second is that we're looking for a practitioner member, which of course by that it embraces teachers, to join BERA's conference and events committee, and we're just gagging for people to come up with opportunities to suggest events like today, for example, but right the way through to how we can make the conference and the various other events. I think we put on about 65 events each year. We are gagging also to expand not just across the 4 nations but internationally. Again, I just want to thank everybody. Matt, any final words from you at all?
Just some great comments. So thanks for that, because that's really helpful in terms of how we organise future events. So just really grateful of everyone's time. Thank you so much, and thanks Jerry for doing a great job of chairing. Wonderful.
I'm looking at the time. We've run over by 2 minutes. Bad chair. I'm going bad chair indeed. Thanks very much to everybody. It's been really an amazing event. Go and enjoy your evenings.